we wanted to make sure that they were welcoming, they were inviting, they weren't stiff in any way, shape, or form, that they actually reflected what our culture was, which was really important for us. So we dropped all of the legal jargon out of it. We wanted it to actually read like it was supposed to instead of being bogged down in those standard HR policy languages that I'm sure you've all seen. I'm in HR, I'm familiar with them as well. So we actually modeled ours after the IBM guidelines, which are out there, they're published online, and they're pretty great. So what we did was we took a one-page document, we gave an intro for some context, and then we laid out all of our points in numbered bullets, kind of one right after the other, and said, all right, here's the takeaway, go, have a good time, get involved. And then we followed that up with a supplemental document that really dove into all of those points and put them into paragraphs. So that actually laid out all of the framework in case people were interested, in case they wanted to learn more, and that really hit it more of the HR policy side just to make sure that everything was covered appropriately. And that included everything from don't forget your day job because you've got work to be doing, but we still want you to get involved, to hey, if you're talking about the company, just remember that you should maintain some professionalism. A lot of these things were common sense items. We really felt like, hey, if we hire these employees to build buildings, which is something pretty important, then we should be able to trust them to act professional on the social media channels. One of the questions that had come up that Andy had passed along was about cross-departmental squabbles and not necessarily seeing eye to eye. And let me tell you, the HR, PR, and marketing people that were in the room doing this, even though there were only 3 of us, we did not necessarily see eye to eye on all of these things. And what I found was the best thing to do was lay everything out on the table and really check your ego at the door. It doesn't really matter who's right and who's wrong. It's really about putting out the products that you want. So, with life in general, but social media especially, which is all about collaboration, when you're actually listening to each other, then you can really build something that's significantly stronger. Combining the HR, the PR, and the marketing pieces, we were actually able to combine perspectives and put out something much better than it would have been if just one of us had actually done it. So you've got that employer branding piece of it, you've got the marketing to the whole staff piece of it, you've got the PR that's actually sending it out and making sure that everybody's reading it and understanding what it means. So with all of those combined, we were able to put out guidelines that actually reflected who we are and were understandable. Our CEO sent out an email to everyone to let them know they existed. Brian and I did a presentation here in DC locally to let people know about what they were, again with that cross-departmental synergy going on. And then we put them up on our intranet page, and if you click on this link that says tweet responsibly, then you'll pull up our guidelines, which is pretty fun. So yeah, all of that really went to drive that point home that we needed all of those different pieces to actually put something out that was great.
And just to finish off the Smith Group story, I think probably you guys all know this. Aaron and I were actually at a conference last week in Boston, and we got a great chance to hear Chris Brogan. I'm sure a lot of you know Chris Brogan speak, and he was reminding us, like, don't use these social media channels as just another PR mouthpiece. We have enough of that. I think that was something that maybe it's a little bit of a disagreement between the traditional communication staff at our firm and sort of us social media people that are getting into social media now at the firm. We want to be promoting others 12 times as much as ourselves. I think for an exact number there, but yeah, that's something we definitely don't want to forget. We're trying to do that at Smith Group for sure. And I'm going to pass it to Aaron. I was going to talk about.
Can I ask one question before you pass it on what you just said about the disconnect?
Yeah.
Is there a disconnect between your communication staff right now?
I would say right now there is, because these tools are really new, and some of the PR staff is trained in maybe the old school way of doing PR. Do you not find that, or?
No, I don't. But I come from a communications background, which is why I asked.
Right.
And I look at it as just another set of tools for doing what you should be doing well, but which isn't push out any, which has never been to just shove stuff out. So I guess it's a different. Maybe I come from a new perspective.
Yeah, when I say disagreement, it's not like it's just sort of a philosophical sort of debate that I see happening now.
Okay, so to follow up what Brian and Mike mentioned from our larger firm perspective, I work for Fox Architects. We have 2 offices, one right down here on 14th and then one in Tyson's Corner. We have 60 employees. We do all of our marketing communications out of one office, one department. And the challenge that we had, well, I'd say the good part was that we just jumped in and did it. We said, everyone's doing this, we need to be doing this. I think one anecdote that was missed earlier is that our industry, it's known as the AEC industry, is light years behind. I mean, we are so far in the dark. I think we were talking about last year at this national conference we went to, which was an SMPS conference. There was one session on social media. There was no hashtag. There was, maybe 3 people even uttering the word social media. This year, a year later, we have close to 1,500 tweets. We have a hashtag. We had 6 or 7 sessions. We had Chris Brogan as our speaker. So that shows you how far behind we are as far as associations go, technology, communication. So I think this is really big for our industry to see that firms like this and like our firm are actually allowing people to do this and to venture into this new media. Like you mentioned, I think we're a lot to do with the traditional media, the press releases, that type of thing, and then using this now, the first step was kind of augmenting our strategy by using these new tools. So that was something that we just jumped in and we said, we're just going to do this. And being from a smaller firm, it's, you ask for forgiveness before you ask for permission. And we jumped in and did it, and everything was centralized in our marketing and communications department, which was great. The marketing staff, the graphic, everyone was having a great time with it. This is a lot of work, but this is a lot of fun. Eventually we got to a point where instead of looking at it from, at our firm from a landscape perspective, we started to break it down into the parts and pieces and figure out where is our content being driven from. A lot of times marketing communications in a firm kind of is the hub or the heart of the communications, and you kind of know what's going on. Not so much. After a while, I think people started to burn out saying, we're working on this 24/7, we're also doing our day jobs, what happened to be proposals and PR and events and photography and all that stuff that comes under the umbrella of marketing in our industry. And we figured out that we need to really figure out what the destination points are. Where is this content coming from that we're trying to push out? What are we trying to pull back in, and how are we disseminating this? So what we did was we set up a structure and used the community manager type model, where we had one person, which happened to be myself at the time, kind of being the air traffic controller for these efforts. We had a kind of a roll up your sleeves kind of session. We brought in IT, HR, we brought someone in from finance. Maybe we should have invited them, but communications, we brought a couple C-suite people in, a couple people from within the design studios, which was interesting because it was perfect timing. In the summer when you have interns that will do social media all day, every day, they were perfect advocates to bring them in and use them as people on the front lines, pushing and pulling the information. So we got everyone in the room, and the way we did this was we went around the table and we asked them what their biggest challenges were day to day, and we used those challenges then to set up the goals. So, for example, if recruiting or, we have an internship program, so finding good interns that we want to have in here for the summer, not necessarily going to hire them in this market, but people that are willing to work hard and that will, do research projects, that kind of thing. So that was a neat thing from HR. So we used that as one of our goals in employing the social media strategy, was to help accomplish that for HR. We went through marketing communications. We had our own set of goals. IT had some things with technology and information, pushing it out through our firm and also collaborating with other firms. So we kind of went around the table and used the challenges then to set up the goals, and then again the measurements came from there. So how are we reaching these goals? What things are we measuring? And it was interesting to get the perspectives from everyone, including the technical staff, because it's interesting for being such creative people, architects and interior designers are not up on any of this stuff. I think they look to the communications and the marketing and the PR staff. That's their thing. I think also using words like Twitter and hashtag, they just think it's a big joke. So I think kind of breaking the ice and saying, we're here to help you. We did a couple education sessions. I think that was another thing, was the breaking down that barrier of the unknown. If you don't know something, it's easier to walk away than to ask the question sometimes. So we had an open forum, and this was kind of our core team. But the thing with the community manager that we kind of tried to employ, and I think we use it still to keep everything organized. You get these people going, you have and this is where we set up the guidelines. So we went in, we jumped in, we did it, and then we said, wait a minute, if we're going to bring in a group, I think our group was about 12 people, if we're going to bring in a group this large, we need some guidelines. And again, you don't want to take the fun